Have you ever noticed how silence at the breakfast table can feel heavier than any argument? Two people who shared decades of life together, yet lately it feels like you are living beside each other, not with each other. If you have ever wondered, how did we end up here, you are not alone. Today's video explores why so many couples over 50 feel emotionally lost, even when they are still together under the same roof. And more importantly, what may help bring connection back. When you think back to the early years of your relationship, everything had motion. Every day felt like a step toward something. You were saving for a first home, figuring out parenting, working toward promotions or paying off debts. You had a shared mission. Even when life was chaotic, you were moving in the same direction. The teamwork created connection. Then life changed, slowly and quietly. Kids grew up. Careers settled down or shifted into autopilot. The pressure that kept you running side by side started to fade. Suddenly the question wasn't what do we need to do next, but what do we do now? Without realizing it, the marriage lost the sense of a shared destination. The truth is that goals give relationships structure. They give you something to talk about, something to collaborate on, even something to disagree on. You felt like partners. When those goals disappear, the partnership can feel like it is missing its purpose. Some couples wake up and realize the house is too quiet. They start filling their days with separate routines. One spends more time with hobbies. The other watches TV or scrolls on their phone. On the outside, everything seems fine. The bills are paid, the home is peaceful, and no one is arguing. But inside, something feels hollow. It can feel like you are living in parallel lives, sharing the same space, but not the same journey. You pass each other in the hallway like friendly roommates. You still care deeply about each other. You still love each other. But without shared goals, the energy that once pulled you together now quietly pushes you apart. It is not that the relationship failed. It is that life shifted, and no one talked about what the next chapter should look like. Many people reach this stage and think, is this all there is? You imagine that once the hard years were behind you, the connection would flow naturally. But connection is not automatic. It needs motion. It needs direction. When couples have shared goals, even simple ones, they feel like a team again. The goals don't have to be big or impressive. What matters is that you create moments where both of you are moving toward the same thing. Goals are not about achievement. They are about partnership. They remind you that you are still building a life together, not just maintaining one. There's a moment in many long-term relationships when the talking doesn't stop, but the conversation becomes thin. You speak every day, yet nothing meaningful gets exchanged. You discuss errands, bills, appointments, grocery lists, upcoming plans for the kids or grandkids. It feels like a business meeting more than two people sharing a life. You check off tasks like a project. The emotional side of the relationship gets lost somewhere between did you send that payment and what time is the doctor's appointment. This shift happens slowly. In the early days, you could stay up for hours talking about dreams, fears, opinions, and what-if ideas. Even silence used to feel warm. But over time, responsibilities take over. Schedules tighten. Life gets heavier. You start using all your energy to manage the home, the family, the finances. You talk about what needs to be done, not what needs to be felt. Without noticing, you prioritize efficiency over intimacy. The relationship becomes organized, but emotionally thin. Many couples over 50 don't realize how much this change affects their connection. They may think, we talk every day. We communicate just fine. But communication and connection aren't the same thing. You can exchange information without sharing yourself. You can live together without being emotionally present. When conversation stays on the surface for too long, the emotional bond softens. You begin to feel unseen, even though you are sitting across from the same person you have shared decades with. Sometimes silence becomes safer than depth. You avoid expressing how you really feel because you don't want to start conflict. Or you assume the other person wouldn't understand. so you stick to the safe topics, schedules, bills, weather. It keeps the peace, but it also keeps the distance. What gets forgotten is that emotional conversation isn't unnecessary or dramatic. It's oxygen. When two people feel emotionally connected, the relationship feels alive. When they stop sharing thoughts, stories, feelings, or private worries, the relationship can slowly starve, even without a single argument. Conversation does not have to be intense or heavy. It can be simple. Asking what someone has been thinking about lately. Talking about memories. Sharing a funny story from the day. Letting curiosity replace routine. The point isn't to fix anything. It's to remember that beneath the roles, you are two people who once found each other interesting. Emotional connection grows not from big talks, but from small, real conversations that remind you why you chose each other. Somewhere along the way, familiarity can make us believe we already know everything about our partner. After decades together, it feels safe to assume their likes, their routines, their opinions. You know how they take their coffee, what shows they prefer, how they react when stressed. That familiarity becomes a comfort, but it can also quietly shut the door to curiosity. When curiosity disappears, so does the feeling of discovery. Two people can love each other deeply but slowly stop exploring who the other person is today. People change. Their dreams change. Their fears change. Their values shift as they grow older. The problem appears when partners hold on to an outdated idea of who the other person used to be. Maybe your partner used to avoid trying new things, but now they are secretly thinking about traveling alone or learning something new. Maybe you assume they are not interested in a hobby or a topic, so you never ask. Many couples over 50 get surprised when they realize that the person they have shared a life with still has undiscovered layers. Curiosity is not just for new relationships. It keeps long relationships alive. Think back to when you first met. You asked questions. You wanted to know everything. You listened because you cared. You were interested not only in what they said, but in how they felt. That attention made your partner feel special. Over time, as routines formed, questions faded. The relationship became predictable. Predictability brings convenience, but it slowly drains excitement. When curiosity stops, assumptions fill the space. Instead of asking, you guess. Instead of exploring, you settle. You no longer ask about their thoughts or their internal world. Many people reach 50 or 60 and start asking themselves, does my partner even see who I am anymore? Not because of lack of love, but because curiosity was replaced by routine. Curiosity is a form of affection. When someone asks about your dreams or how you feel, it sends a message, you matter. Your mind matters. Your inner world matters. You do not need to suddenly uncover deep secrets or have long emotional talks. Sometimes curiosity is simply noticing small things. Asking how their day truly felt. Asking about a memory they still hold close. Asking what they look forward to in this phase of life. Relationships don't lose passion because time passes. They lose passion when curiosity fades. When you stop exploring each other, the relationship stops growing. When you choose to stay curious, even in small everyday moments, your partner feels seen again. And feeling seen is often what brings two people close, even after decades together. For many couples, especially after years of managing responsibilities and raising children, peace becomes the ultimate goal. No arguments. No tension. No conflict. On the surface, that seems like a sign of a stable relationship. But sometimes what feels like peace is actually quiet distance. It's the kind of calm that comes not from harmony, but from avoiding anything that could disrupt the routine. You stop bringing up your needs because you don't want to cause friction. You stop expressing disappointment because you're tired of repeating yourself. You stay silent because silence feels easier than another disagreement. Over time, that silence stretches into a gap neither person knows how to cross. It often starts with good intentions. One or both people decide to keep the peace. You let things slide. You say it's fine when it's not. You swallow the frustration, thinking you're being mature. But holding everything in doesn't create peace, it builds emotional loneliness. You can sit beside someone you love in the same room and still feel miles away. The house becomes quiet, but your hearts feel even quieter. There is a subtle danger in this kind of comfort. It trains you to avoid vulnerability. When you stop sharing what bothers you, you also stop sharing what excites you, inspires you, or scares you. Conversations become safe and shallow. You discuss errands, plans, TV shows. You talk about everything except how you truly feel. The emotional bond weakens, not because anything bad happened, but because nothing real is happening anymore. Some couples mistake the absence of conflict for the presence of connection. But connection requires being seen and understood. It requires honesty. It requires the courage to show your inner world, not just your well-managed exterior. Without that, you're living in a quiet truce instead of a living relationship. The peace becomes a wall. You avoid tough conversations because you fear the discomfort. Yet those conversations are where closeness grows. They are where you learn about each other and yourself. Many people over 50 reach a point where they realize the quiet is not comforting anymore. It feels cold. They remember the passionate discussions they used to have when they cared enough to fight for what they felt. The irony is that the very thing they avoided to keep the peace could have brought them closer. When you allow space for honest emotion, even if it's uncomfortable at first, you create room for connection to breathe. Real peace isn't the absence of conflict. Real peace is the presence of understanding. Retirement can feel like stepping into an entirely new world. For years, your days followed a rhythm. Wake up, get ready, go to work, come home, handle dinner, talk briefly, sleep. Even if life was busy, there was structure. Work gave you purpose. It gave you identity. It created natural distance during the day, and that space often softened conflict. When you finally saw each other in the evening, you had things to talk about. You had stories from your day, moments to share, and a sense of accomplishment. Then retirement arrives, and suddenly the structure disappears. Days become wide open, unplanned, and quiet. What once felt like freedom can start feeling like emptiness, especially if both people had different expectations for this stage of life. One person may imagine long slow mornings and relaxing at home. The other may crave travel, hobbies, or social activities. Neither is wrong, but no one prepared for the shift. You go from "we don't have enough time together" to "we have too much time together," and that sudden closeness can be overwhelming. Retirement doesn't just change how you spend your time. It changes who you are. If work was part of your identity, losing that role can feel like losing part of yourself. It can create a subtle emotional void. You start asking questions you never had time to think about before. What is my purpose now? What do I look forward to each day? Do I still feel needed? These questions are not always spoken out loud, but they silently affect how you show up in the marriage. Some couples slip into separate routines without meaning to. One partner discovers new interests, joins a club, or starts exercising regularly. The other feels unsure of what to do and falls into passive habits like watching TV or scrolling the phone. Before long, both are living in the same house but following different rhythms. The connection that used to come naturally needs more intention now. Other couples experience what feels like a lack of personal space. After years of independent schedules, being together all day every day can cause friction. Small quirks that used to go unnoticed suddenly feel amplified. Simple things, like how someone loads the dishwasher or leaves lights on, begin to irritate. It isn't about the dishes or the lights. It's about trying to adjust to a new rhythm without acknowledging how big the change really is. Retirement brings freedom, but it also brings transition. The rhythm of the marriage doesn't adjust automatically. It takes time to learn how to move together again, as partners rather than co-workers in the same house. When that new rhythm begins to form, the relationship often becomes quieter, softer, and surprisingly more meaningful. It's not a return to who you used to be. It's a chance to become something new, together. money has a quiet way of shaping the emotional atmosphere of a relationship. It doesn't shout. It doesn't announce its presence. But it sits beneath daily decisions, influencing how secure or stressed each person feels. Many couples over 50 assume that feeling lost in their marriage must be emotional in nature, yet sometimes the real distance begins with silent financial tension. When partners are not on the same page about how money should be spent, saved, or enjoyed, the relationship starts to drift even if the love is still there. In earlier years, the financial path often feels clear. You work. You raise children. You save what you can. You make decisions because you must. Survival and progress provide direction. But as retirement approaches, money becomes more emotional than practical. It becomes tied to security, freedom, comfort, and even identity. One person might feel anxious about running out of money, while the other sees this stage of life as a chance to finally enjoy what they worked for. When those viewpoints clash and no one talks about it openly, small unspoken worries grow into silent emotional walls. Shared expenses can slowly turn into separate priorities. One partner hesitates to spend on outings or travel because they are thinking of long-term stability. The other feels frustrated and limited because they are thinking about enjoying life while they still feel healthy and active. Both perspectives make sense, but without communication, each begins to feel misunderstood. They interpret the other's habits through personal emotion rather than shared purpose. The careful spouse is seen as controlling. The spontaneous spouse is seen as careless. In reality, neither feels secure. They simply have different definitions of safety. This distance isn't caused by lack of affection. It comes from internal fear. Money carries memories. Past financial struggles, childhood scarcity, or previous mistakes in spending can make one person more cautious. Meanwhile, the desire to enjoy the present can come from feeling robbed of time by work and responsibility for decades. At this stage of life, money isn't only numbers. It's emotional history. Over time, the emotional distance shows up in subtle ways. One partner makes personal purchases without discussing it. The other hides spending out of embarrassment or guilt. Conversations become defensive. Instead of working together, each starts managing money individually. The teamwork that once defined the relationship gets replaced by quiet separation. The surprising part is that when couples talk about their financial fears, not the budget, not the bank balance, but the feelings behind the decisions, the emotional distance often softens. When each person understands what the other is trying to protect, both feel safer. It becomes less about money and more about partnership. In the beginning of a relationship, celebration comes naturally. You notice every small effort. You say thank you for the littlest things. You praise each other, not because it's expected, but because the admiration feels effortless. You were two people discovering each other, and everything your partner did felt meaningful. Over time, life became fuller. Responsibilities stacked up. Careers demanded energy. Kids needed attention. In the rush of daily tasks and years passing, appreciation slowly shifted into assumption. What used to feel worth celebrating became routine. The things that once made you smile now go unnoticed, not because you don't care, but because familiarity can make us blind to what we have. Many couples over 50 don't realize how much this affects the emotional climate of the relationship. When appreciation fades, effort fades too. People thrive when they feel seen. A simple compliment can make someone stand taller. A kind acknowledgement can make an ordinary day feel special. But when days pass without recognition, a subtle sadness settles in. You begin to feel invisible, even when someone is sitting right beside you. Celebration is not about grand gestures. It's not about fancy gifts, surprise trips, or dramatic speeches. In long relationships, celebration shows up in the small moments. Noticing when your partner looks nice. Saying thank you when they make a meal, even if they've done it 1,000 times. Pointing out something they still do well. These small acts of acknowledgement carry more weight than any expensive gift ever could. They say, "I still see you. I still value you." When appreciation disappears, resentment quietly takes its place. One partner wonders why their efforts go unnoticed. The other feels unappreciated and pulls back. Slowly, without realizing, both begin to give less, try less, connect less. Love doesn't disappear. It just becomes quiet, buried under routine. Couples often assume that longevity means love doesn't need to be expressed anymore. But love that isn't expressed doesn't feel like love at all. After 50, many people reach a point where they long not for romance, but for recognition. They want to feel chosen again. They want to feel interesting. They want to feel like their presence still matters. The spark doesn't fade because time passes. It fades because celebration does. Every person deserves to feel appreciated. When you bring back acknowledgement, small compliments, small thank you, small moments of noticing, you bring warmth back into the relationship. When you celebrate each other, you don't just keep love alive. You make it feel alive again. If anything in this video touched you, share your story in the comments. You never know who you may inspire. If you want more videos on relationships, family bonding, and navigating life after 50, subscribe and stay with us. Your next chapter can still be your best chapter. You just have to turn the page together.